Hello there. Today I'm going to take a look at three young Chinese photographers who are creating work that reveals the complex challenges faced by people growing up in a rapidly transforming China. In the 1980s, the country moved away from Maoism and towards what the national leaders called market socialism. Economic and social reforms were designed to revitalize the society so that it could interact and compete internationally. The speed of change has left many of the youth bewildered about their identity. These three photographers come to terms with the memories of their vanishing past, as well as the uncertainty of their futures. While some of the older generation is still clinging to the old ways, the youth is already plugged into an interconnected world. Shi Yangkun left his home in Shaanxi to study first in a Chinese university and then in London. He was influenced by photographers like Jeff Wall and William Eggleston. When he returned home, he found that urbanization had transformed the place that he once knew. His childhood home had just 3 streets, but over a decade it developed into a city with over 1 million inhabitants. And it wasn't just the outward features that changed. People's conversations also seemed to turn to new subjects like making money and discussing the fact that they could no longer exercise outside because of the air pollution. He realized that he would never truly be able to return home because that way of life had vanished. There's a name for this particular form of homesickness. It's called solastalgia, or as Yankin puts it, being homesick while you're at home. He named his photographic project after this feeling and set about trying to capture his uncertainties about the country's transformation. The images that he produced are tender and reveal his feelings of loss. His project Retrotopia continues with this theme. He examines the tension between modern-day capitalism and the collective communities that continue to embrace Mao's legacy. Since the 1980s, when the country's leadership launched their opening up policy, most Chinese have embraced capitalism, but not everyone was happy to abandon the collective dream. Yankin went about photographing these massive collectively run villages that promise residents jobs and access to social services. He found that most of the villagers are happy to live in this socialist utopia, but some of the younger, more individualist residents rebel against life within a time capsule. Yankin's project scratches at the interface between these two vastly different ways of life. Lo Yang grew up close to nature in a small village in the northeast of China. Now living and working in the overcrowded cities of Beijing and Shanghai, she sometimes yearns for those simple times. She worked on her New Girl series for over 10 years. For her portraits, she chose young women who deviated from the conventional expectations of early marriage, kids, and a steady job. Yang was drawn to these independent young women because they dared to live differently, embracing alternative lifestyles and popular culture. She initially began photographing in college as a way of coming to terms with the confusion of adolescence. But she began developing a loose aesthetic that reflected her personal responses to life in modern-day China, as well as the lack of certainty within society as a whole. Her subjects reveal their vulnerability as well as their strength. While Chinese audiences see her work as accurate documentation, In the West, her photographs are interpreted from a political or feminist perspective. But neither of these was her intention.
当然在开始拍摄的时候并没有想那么多，说我要打破一个什么样的一个桎梏，或者是说社会对女性的一种限制和一种压力。但是可能至少从我当时内心里边，我至少想打破我自己的，别人给到我的，不管是从这个社会还是从一些各方面，比如家庭。后期可能会觉得，比如说中国的女性会受到，比如年龄到一定阶段，会父母或者是说这个社会说啊，你需要去结婚，你要有个男朋友之类的一些事情。柔软，我觉得是一个很女性特质的一个点。这种柔软和这种坚强和这种很 powerful 的一面，它是同时共存的。就是因为这种很柔软的一些点，会让女性有一种很有韧性的一种力量。
Some critics have compared her photographs to those of Nan Goldin, but even though she admires Goldin, she sees her work as being of a different time and that it reflects her experiences and her particular culture. She's extended her interest in a follow-up series called Youth, and included in her subjects now is androgynous young men. Xiao Sha Xu was born in southeastern China, and during her teens she and her family moved to the Netherlands. Initially within this foreign environment she felt isolated and homesick, and was unable to communicate her feelings and concerns to others. Eventually, at the age of 22, she discovered photography, and the camera started to become her voice. So she was able to express her feelings about the confusing liminal space that she occupied. She felt like both an outsider and an insider in whichever culture she found herself. The split is reflected in her work. It conveys intimacy, but also unease and sometimes even skepticism. For her graduation project at the Photo Academy Amsterdam, she travelled back to her original home. There she discovered traces of familiarity, but also a sense of disorientation. Like many other Chinese cities, Guangzhou had transformed. The old cities and houses that she remembered had been replaced. All the familiar images from her childhood had disappeared, and she was forced to rediscover the place that had once been her home. One can understand why duality has become one of her major themes. Her work explores what has been lost and what remains of traditions and cultures, as well as feelings of reunion mixed with alienation. The name of her first book, The Way of the Golden Mountain, refers to a saying associated with an earlier period when many Chinese, including her parents, wished to move to the West in order to find work and prosperity. Obviously, the Golden Mountain in this case is the West. This image shows two pieces of clothing hanging on a rack in a public park. The space was established through donations from villagers who had moved to the West, in a similar manner to how Xu's parents had. For her, the garments fluttering in the wind symbolizes the displaced feelings that these migrants felt while living abroad. Their lives floating between the new homes and the places that they left behind. For her project, Watering My Horse, she photographed the lives of people who live in the villages close to the Great Wall. This famous structure served as a cultural boundary and a monument to the country's power. But its symbolism has changed in recent years. It's now become associated with ideas of decline and transformation, but also sometimes still with hope. Xu was drawn to the loneliness of this fading symbol and also to the people living alongside it, many of whom are descendants of the original soldiers who built and guarded the structure. Today there are self-appointed wall protectors who still feel a deep responsibility for its preservation, as well as for maintaining the traditions of the past. Now for villagers, the structure often serves as a functional object in their daily lives. Abandoned watchtowers become shelters, and shepherds adapt the barriers to form enclosures for their livestock. I'll finish off the video by showing her images from the series Shooting the Tiger. These images were taken in the northwest of China, and they document the traditional festival of spring. Xu's images leave one feeling a little uneasy because one's initially attracted to the bright colors and ancient costumes, but her subjects seem alienated against the bleak, snowy landscapes. One also begins to feel the tension as one becomes aware of the people behind these mythical characters that they portray. While working on the project, she became aware of how enthusiasm for the festival has faded over time, in the similar way that the once strong bond between people and the land has also weakened. I hope you've enjoyed these images, and I'll see you next time.